even I say they're in a better place. You'll have to lose your parents at some point while you're alive. So you have that grief coming. It's an interesting idea that don't attend the funeral until they have died, you know? Because some people just go through it that, okay, they're dead already, but they're not while they're alive.
For me, the sadness of it could have been better, and now it's not possible.
It's a way of penance every time you get to do.
There are effects to death that people don't realize. There's a physical death when somebody passed away, right? But the second death is when we no longer remember them.
Anything in life, if you avoid it, it will keep on pursuing you. The moment you face it, it transforms you.
And it was for the first time, interestingly enough, I really felt hurt. And they all committed it.
Wow.
And I thought, wow. And then suddenly she stopped herself and she said, why are you not doing anything? I said, well, it's not about me. Voice it, but then basically ask, I'm really sorry, I really caused possibly hurt. Will you forgive me?
I've learned it the hard way. I'm guilty of doing it. I still have clear, vivid memory how someone was just sharing a bad experience with me, and when I just straight away thought that I have to give some advice and also point out what they could have done better rather than listening to them. Imagine. Welcome to Knowing Who You Are, and Happy New Year to you all. And I think I can say that because we're still in January. It's just started. And this is the 15th of January when we are recording it. So I think I can still say we're quite fresh in the new year. And as you know, most of the time, whenever we get into the new year, everyone starts with a new resolution and everyone starts thinking about it from the 31st of December of the previous year. And they get into the new year with a new goal. We have a goal and we work on a goal. But main thing is the process. And we have to think about the growth. And keeping that process in mind, we have started this new show. And I'm very glad to announce that this show I'm getting to do with a fellow coach who has tons of experience, and he's sharing his wisdom through his clients and on his own social media channels, and also Knowing Who You Are in different episodes through the shorts and the long form conversation we had. It's none other than Marco Stefano. So I have got in touch with Marco and said, Marco, this is my plan for New Year, that I want to do a weekly conversation or a dialogue between you and me since I've started my coaching journey as well. How about we tackle one topic at a time and then we discuss on that, shed light on that, and people, you and I and Marco, me, everyone else, we go through these troubles in life, and how do we deal with this? We are talking with people and we are getting to know other clients and people who are coaching with our constant training, our reading, and how we are trying to work on our own growth. We are getting to learn these things. So we thought that we have this conversation and share with you all. So from that came out this new show, Weekly Conversations with Ershad and Marco, where coaching meets real life. So let me welcome Marco Stefano and let's have this conversation going. Hi, Marco. Welcome.
Hi, Ershad. Yes, thank you for having me. Great to see you.
And yeah, thank you. And Marco, it's a pleasure because every time I go back to many of the topics or many of the recordings we have done before and many of the episodes of Knowing Who You Are, the long form conversation we have, the conversation you and we have, it's very free flowing and it flows really as if we can hear each other, you know, even without saying it. So I felt when I came to you with that proposal, Marco, what do you think about that? And thankfully, you agreed to it, that you will give your time and we'll do it every week. Also, the research and the work we have to do to bring this information to the people who will be listening and watching us, that's a lot of work too. So the first episode, when I asked Marco, what should we talk about? And Marco has been working on, and also he's doing a lot of study on the idea of loss and grief and grieving. So that was Marco's idea. So how about the first episode, we talk about losses. So Marco, that's where we are. And as you said, that it might not be possible to cover every aspect of loss and grieving probably in one episode. And if need be, if we see that we cannot cover that within an hour, then we'll probably move on to episode 2, but probably touch upon different parts of loss and grief. So how about we decide that we keep it limited in terms of losses that we suffer in our lives, say family member, relations, or loved ones. We just keep it. And to be honest with you, many of the things we'll be discussing today, it might be applicable to other areas of life. But as we go forward, and as I've said, that probably if we can't cover all the different aspects of losses and grieving, then we'll probably move on to another episode. So to start with, Marco, what do you think of grief and loss? I mean, what's your definition of it?
Well, definition, that's an interesting question already. I think my first take, although by hearing the word grief and loss, is there's still a lot of taboo, awkwardness, uncomfortableness around talking about grief and loss. And I think it's one of the reasons why we want to have this conversation is to basically, even though it's a tough topic, to normalize it, that it is not awkward, that it's not difficult. It may be painful, but I think it's very important that we embrace loss and grief as part of life, just as we celebrate life when there is new life, like a child is being born, or there's celebration because of a relationship, a marriage, or or other things that we have more positive feelings with. And so that's the first thing, because I've encountered, through my own experience of loss and grief, but also listening to other people, a lot of people do not know how to respond when people are faced with grief or with loss. And what then tends to happen is, and I don't know if you can feel free to jump in on that, people come with statements like, for example, if somebody lost a baby, miscarriage, some people then say, well, you can always have another child. Right? Of course, you know that logically, but in the moment, it's basically a hurtful statement because somebody lost a person, or somebody lost a loved one, and then, well, he's now in a better place, or God took him.
I was thinking in terms of like creating segments while we discuss. So say, for example, for me, when I think about grief, it's definitely, even though the grieving and the losses, it's somehow related to some kind of, most of the time, death. So it feels like that grieving is, or grief or loss is like a death of something. Say, for example, if it's a relationship, it's death of that bonding that someone had. If it's divorce, then the loss is like the death of that marriage. And say, for example, if you have a job loss, it's like death of that kind of paycheck and the place you used to go to and the people you used to see every day. The chance is gone. That's the death of that possibility. So, and as you said, you're just touching up on the things that I was getting into, because no one's grief, you cannot compare anyone's grief with anyone else. Like, okay, you can say my one is worse because I lost someone, but your one is not as big because you've just lost a job, probably. But the thing is that how everyone process and everyone's grief to them is worse, is the worst one that one can possibly have. And that's what you mentioned, that when we judge that, because when we see the grieving and the losses, sometimes it's an internal process, isn't it? And you can see the mourning. Someone is crying more, someone is crying less. But how someone is grieving is totally internal. And when we see that, oh, you look okay. I know that you've lost someone, but you look okay. That's the thing, because we probably should touch up on our own losses as we start at some point. Because people might say, okay, what do you know about loss, Marco? What do you know about loss, Ershad? But the thing is that we can talk about it, what we have experienced, not only in terms of losses in our relationships or people we lost in our life. And say, for example, in 2024, in June, I lost my dad. Within 6 months, just this month last year, in 2025, I lost my mom. So within a period of 6 months, this space, I lost both of them. But even I say they're in a better place. Like, we try to bring spirituality to it, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, don't worry about it. They're in a better place. As you started saying, that's where I'm getting at now. Because that doesn't really help. All people need, they don't need your advice, your consultation, or how you're going to solve the problem and try to cope with it. They're in a better place. And this kind of spirituality, what helps sometimes is to let them talk. Say, for example, if a couple, husband and wife, and at some point probably the wife lost the husband or the husband lost the wife, they probably had a ritual every day during the breakfast. They'll sit down, they'll have a cup of coffee, and they'll talk to each other. Or the wife is sitting there, see there's an empty space in the sofa next to the wife where they used to sit down, watch TV together in the evening or something.
Yeah.
If all we can do, we can let them process it, because there are so many stages of grieving as well, isn't it? So if we just tell them, what does it feel like to see that empty space today that won't be, no one can fill it up. It's gone. That empty space is there now. What do you feel like? So let them talk and just listen.
Yeah, it's I call it empathic listening. And that means, stepping into somebody else's experience as an equal, trying to understand where they're at with their feelings, their thinking, their perspectives, their concerns. And as you tap into that, let that then guide your responses. But it's really about them. It's not about you. And I think all these statements like, oh, well, anything happens for a reason, that's also kind of a credo that I hear so many times. And I'm thinking, I don't need an explanation. I don't need a cliche. Because when you say that to people in that moment, it doesn't give comfort. It's basically, sometimes people feel like salt on a wound. It can be very hurtful. And so, but sometimes people don't know it, that they do it. That's the other side of the coin, because this is being passed on from generation to generation.
Trying to be helpful, isn't it?
You know, I can hear that from people. They say, well, my dad said, oh, you just need to get busy. That's another one. You know, just get busy, get over it, and life is moving forward. All those kind of statements, in my opinion, are not helpful. And I would like to introduce a different way of approach, which may be a shock for people to hear. Grief has no expiration date. It has no finish line.
I was about to ask you that question. Yeah.
I still grieve sometimes over things that happened 10 years ago, 20 years ago. Not as intense as it was when it happened. But it can sometimes, by surprise, hit a nerve in me when I either watch a movie and a similar scene that just triggered it, or see something in the news, or it can catch you by surprise. And I think it's more about learning to speak. It's almost like grief is speaking a language that we have to learn, with all its nuances, with all its different tones and intensity, and therefore sometimes it's really like raw, and other times it's very subtle. But sometimes I think this is maybe also, I think, important. There can also be a joy element about grief, because it was like, oh, I had such a good time with that person. And this made me smile when I think about it, even though the person is not there anymore. And the reason why I'm saying this, that was in, I think, when was it? In October, I met a person who just lost his wife after 2 years of cancer treatment, etc. And I met him, we had a lovely lunch. And I was really, how would I say this? Strangely enough, very encouraged and comforted by him sharing his love for his wife and how they shared life, and the rawness of it, but also the beauty of it. And I thought, wow, it was so precious to be part of that.
But to get to that point where that person is, that's a big journey. I think he probably had been through this different process, because normally it's been found that people who seek help, it takes them up to 5 years before they can, because most of the time people are in denial. And this is our brain's process to protect us, because it doesn't want us to get overburdened by this one. And it's a natural reaction that you're in denial that, okay, that person is lost, I cannot let them go. And say, for example, most of the time I was struggling when my father passed away. All the cupboard were full of his clothes, things all around. What to do with that? I mean, so would you just create a museum in your house of that person, of that room? What are you going to do? But I heard a very interesting thing, an idea, that when you have those things, which I've done, even though I didn't have the knowledge now that I have, that we keep those things. Like, is there clothing? Is there a pen? Is there a notebook? This is the desk. Keep it as it is. Don't touch anything in the room. Keep it as it used to be. But rather than doing it, I heard this idea, and which I really loved. It's like, take photos, create an album, go through it, but the things that can be useful to someone else now, probably move it on. And which I had done with all my father's clothing. He had a lot of like prayer mats and other things. I've given it to mosques where people can make use of that. And in his village, some other people who attended his funeral, I was like, distribute among those people, and they can have this. There are many poorer people, they can afford proper clothing and everything, so it would be useful to someone. Things like that. But as I was starting saying that, say 5 years, as I was saying, and also interestingly, there are so many different levels of grieving as well. So interestingly enough, which we go through even without losing anyone, is a thing called anticipatory grief. Do you know about this? It's like, say, for example, we grow up with this one. We have this fear. Say, we started with our parents. You know that you won't have your parents with you if you don't die before them out of accident or some disease or something. But normally, if you follow the usual course of action, it would be, you'll have to lose your parents at some point while you're alive. So you have that grief coming. You learn to live with that. But then it can come with, say, for example, your loved one, they have some kind of diagnosis. Say they have cancer or some kind of disease. You have to live with this one. And then once you go through that, you live through that moment, you're grieving every day. And you see that every day something is changing in them. Every day they're going closer to their death. But then once that anticipatory grief moment goes on to, it phases into the next step. When it happens, when that person you have lost that person, it happens that they call it an acute phase. It's when you feel like, okay, even though I was ready for it, I've been preparing myself for the last 5 years because they had cancer, it's been going on, but then suddenly you're set to be on a free fall. And you keep going, you have no ground under your feet. And then after 2 years, they say that it's you reach the early stages of grief, which within 2 years. So it's not a timeline there is, but normally can happen that people come out, start feeling a bit, okay, now I'm opening up to making space for more love than always going through the pain. But
to jump on that with the phases, because I was trained also in the past, through my counseling training about the phases of or the stages. They formulated their stages of grief, and now I would say I disagree with it, because it can formulate to people, well, I need to feel this and then I need to feel that, and grief has no season, has no calendar, has no cycle. It's a mismatch. It comes in waves. It's unpredictable. And so, although the feelings can be helpful to recognize, it's basically non-linear. And that's why I realized I let go of that, because um,
But I feel
from
the anticipatory is though it's a thing, it's definitely there. But then when they say early grief within 2 years, even when they say that with caution, to be honest,
yeah,
it's like for everyone, it can, I mean, the early can come after 10 years for someone, then they can get mature on that and how to process it, they learn. But the anticipatory thing is very interesting because it's an interesting idea that don't attend the funeral until they have died, you know?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Because
yeah.
some people just go through it that, okay, they're dead already, but they're not while they're
Yes,
alive.
they're still alive. But having said that, I lost my dad. Well, it's now over more than 20 years ago, and very suddenly.
Mm.
The relationship at that time frame wasn't that close, unfortunately. Not that I didn't want it close, but there were all kinds of factors. I live abroad, and so one day I got a phone call from the hospital doctor, and basically trying to reach the family members, of which I was one. And he said, "Well, if you want to see your dad alive, you need to come at once because he's dying."
Mm.
So high speed to my country of birth, and arrived in the hospital late at night. I think it was around 11. My father was unconscious, so there was no interaction possible. But of course, I saw his physical state. Eventually, I think the next morning, I had probably less than 10 minutes conversation with him. He was conscious.
Mm.
Afterwards, I'm glad that I had the conversation. But when I had the conversation, I didn't know where to start because sadly there was not have any interest about my life. So where do you start? So I shared anecdotes about my life, what I was doing, and how my life progressed, etc. And we even had sometimes a kind of a smile or laugh, which was good. And then I also felt to say, Dad, I choose to forgive you for not being the dad I want you to be, because it really hurted me in different ways. And we really had a kind of conversation on that moment.
How did he react the first time you said that sentence? Or
He accepted that, and the other way around too, because I also recognized I'm not a saint.
mm.
And then he was gone.
Mm.
He breathed his last, and then was gone. And this is where I've seen death physically showing up. And now I realize all these movies that you see on TV, it's all fake. Of course, we know it's fake,
Mm-hmm.
but I've never seen a body physically change so quick in color.
But did you ever have you been with someone or yourself as well? Did you feel it like, why me? All these people, and you see many people, they abuse themselves. We know that they're living up to the age of 90 or 100 and they have really not taken care of themselves. But there are some people who tried their best, also looked after them, so then they're gone. And you're like, why them? Why not those people? Why him or her? The anger that comes with it sometimes. Have
Well,
you...
talking about anger, for me, anger came in the aftermath when when I had to stay longer in the country in order to attend the funeral, which was all kind of had to be quick. They released the body, and then the whole organization, etc. And but I've noticed when I came back in the UK, a lot of anger started to surface, and the anger, I think, was about the definite of death meant there's no possibility of a better relationship, which I always hoped in a way. But death now just interrupted it, and it's now over and done with. And then the loss of what could have been that never happened. The sadness of missing a father who basically, I've seen, of course, over the years other father role models that you thought, of course, why did my father was unable to do this? Now I understand where he came from, please hear me. But there came a lot of anger to the surface that I realized I need help dealing with this. And that's why on that moment then I sought some therapy in order to help me process it, to get it out of my system. So grief was part of the loss of what could have been and never happened, and then coming to terms with that.
Is it like, if only he lived for a few more years, our relationship could have been better?
Well, this is where the challenge lies. I think it takes two to make a relationship work, regardless where, it's not only applies to couples, it applies to parents, siblings, you name it. I think he missed the capacity to do that. Even if I've waited and I was open for it, he didn't show that initiative, and it had all kinds of probably reasons. And I'm not holding that against him. I know also, he is a product of his upbringing, of his past, his awareness, etc. And I also feel compassion for him, because under his circumstances and how he was raised, you do what you know.
Exactly.
Right? And so, but I still was impacted by his behavior and by his actions. And I had to come to terms with that. But because death is then so definite, that means now it's impossible to do anything about it. And there is then that sense of loss. And that sometimes still comes up, interestingly enough, when I see in movies a lovely relationship between a father and a son, and that they either give you a hug or they tearfully cry because something happened. And it's then, of course, I know it's a movie, but it can sometimes hit a nerve somehow deep down, because it touches upon a loss that I never had.
Yeah, yeah.
You see, so grief, in my understanding, it can appear in so many different aspects, pop his head, and sometimes very strong and sometimes very subtle.
Out of nowhere. I'm telling you, because there are days it has no relation somehow. I was probably listening to something, probably watched something. It has no relation. It's not showing a father or son or something. Out of nowhere, I feel like there's a lump in my throat.
Yeah.
And that's when sometimes I kept going into it, and my younger brother, who's going through it too, I sometimes find his calls that when he's crying out loud, literally, because it's that guilt, if only, say for example, in my case, before his death, at least 3 days he was suffering, but the condition he had, a cardiac condition, there's not enough blood that's passing through, and that was a struggle. And even the doctors had said last time I took him to a doctor that it's a miracle that he's still alive. So we knew that it's coming. For me, it's like anticipatory every day. I would get scared if I received a phone call, since he lives in another country, that in the middle of the night, 3 o'clock, 2 o'clock, if I received a phone call, I would be like, I would jump. And my wife, Esther, I would just tell her, oh my God, please take that call. I cannot take this call, because I know that, okay, it's a bad news. But then before his death, it was 3 days. He was suffering with his serious chest pain, and he couldn't even lie down. So he was sitting. And every time I would call him, and to be honest with you, I wasn't talking as much as I should have during that time. And it was more like life had taken over, because our life is going on at the same time. And I was under a lot of pressure here as well. But then he was saying, don't worry, I'll take care of that. Don't worry, I'll take care of that. I'm spraying, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. And I was like, okay, even though a part of me knows that this is probably it, but at the same time, I'm like, okay, he's taking care of it. So I'm kind of, denying that it's coming, and giving myself the temporary comfort of not dealing with that. So once it happened, I'm like, my guilt was, why didn't I talk to him enough just before? At least I knew that I couldn't have done anything from here. And I could have gone earlier, definitely, be next to him. But every time, it happened a few times, every time I'd been there and we went to hospital, he came out again. So I thought, okay, this is one of those probably. What if it's that? Then I'll be traveling all the way, and then he'll get back. But in the meantime, I had a lot of unfinished business in England, and I would have to leave them halfway, and I couldn't at the time. Which I had to after a day or two when he passed away. But the thing is, we talk about these things like only if I've been there earlier, only if I spoke to him, probably it would have saved. And many people, in my case, even though I had kind of a certainty that there's how he had been living with this condition, which the
Yeah.
doctors even had said that it's a miracle, that it's coming. So
Yeah.
I knew that, but at least I could have been there. But it's a good script transfer for many people like that. Probably that's why I was asking you the question, only if, that sometimes you need to accept the reality and say that it's even if.
Yeah.
Like, even if I'd been there, even if I'd spoken to him, I couldn't have stopped it.
Yeah.
I mean, it was coming. But in your case, though, it's a little bit different. You said it's quite sudden.
It was very sudden. It was out of the blue. One day I get a phone call, and 6 hours later, or whatever the hours, 8 hours later, and he's gone.
What happened to him?
Well, it was interesting. I don't know completely the medical reasons, but I think my mother discovered, had concerns, and the GP felt, well, it was more like a flu. I think something more like flu symptoms. But my mother is a trained nurse, and she felt there's something else going on. So she approached the hospital, and they took him in, and then they discovered. And I remember, I'm not a medical professional at all, but they discovered that certain organs were already shutting down.
Okay.
And then it went quickly downhill. So that's why I got the phone call. So it was really abrupt. And of course you go afterwards, did I had guilt? I didn't have guilt. I had more, because of the relationship dynamic, and this is probably why it can be so personal, because I know people can have very close relationship with their parents, and that it feels very different when you lose them than when it's almost estranged and there's a lot of dysfunction or whatever. That feels again very different. But there's still this, for me, the sadness of it could have been better, and now it's not possible.
But say, for example, if in your case he didn't have the guilt, but say my younger brother, every time he calls me, he discusses this thing that if I could done more, I should have done more. I should have been there for him over the years more. I spoke to him more. And I say the same thing too. Because there are moments that he just wanted to be in a video call, say, for example, and not talking. And if you think about the time difference, it's 3 o'clock in the morning there, while it's 10 o'clock for me. And I'm probably in the kitchen, I'm cooking for next day or something. Me and Esther were just standing there. And I said, you should go to sleep. And he's like, no, it's all right. I have nothing to do. I'm there. And unfortunately, because his partner, my mom, she was going through schizophrenia for the last 10 years. So he was totally lonely. He didn't have a partner, and he was the sole carer for the partner. So it was, every time I think about it, I said, why didn't I talk to him more? Because one of my reasons is that every time I used to call him, he was always stressing over things. And sometimes taking that stress, I would soak a lot of it, and I would get stressed myself. I thought, okay, one of the ways of protecting myself could be speaking less, because I couldn't stop him. I would tell him a lot of different ways that your life is, how it is quite good. You don't have to worry. But at the same time, it's easier said than done. So, but he will create situations in his head that, okay, it's coming, it's really worse and this and that. And that would make me stressed because I cannot help him. I don't know how to help him. So I would sometimes create a situation where I'm like, okay, I have the time. I should pick up the phone. I haven't called him. I should have. So these are the guilt that comes.
Yeah.
But how do you think, and this is why I was saying one of the ways that if only I spoke to him more, but then we have to say that only if to even if I have done it, what's coming is coming, and he had to go. We cannot stop it. That's one thing is guaranteed in life for all of us.
Yeah, we all have an expiration date.
Exactly. I mean, that's a 100% research result that no matter what, you're going one day. So how would you say, or if you have dealt with any clients or people you have talked to, that when they have this feeling of guilt, how people should process it?
Well, for me to approach it is exploring what is the root of the guilt, because the guilt comes from somewhere. So it's worth exploring what's underneath the guilt, and let it in a way dissect it, but also verbalize it. I think if I translate it to myself, with because you said, well, there was no guilt. I said, well, there was guilt in the sense of could I have done more, in the sense of improve the relationship, but I tried and it didn't work.
Okay.
And there comes then the point of, well, how much do I keep on giving and nothing comes back in return?
That's the even if part, that even if I tried more,
Yeah,
it would be the same result.
so but I think it's important to verbalize what is the guilt exactly, bring it into the open, and then also how would it look like how would you feel when it's gone? And what would that feel? How would that feel like? So it's almost like contrasting it.
If you could literally give an example, like verbalizing it, create a scenario for someone who's listening to it.
Well, if you have guilt about that you never talked with somebody, well, you could have done it. But you were basically, and there was no anosmia, there was no dysfunction, right, from their end. It was more about you just basically had no time because you're too busy with your career or with your business, which consumed all the time. And so the person that either suddenly passed away or passed away, you're now confronted with, oh my gosh, I realize I never really spent time with them. And you walk then into their lives, see the empty rooms with all their clothes and the furniture and everything else. So then this guilt surface of, I could have done this differently. I could have done this better. It's interesting that the death is highlighting something in you that you need to be dealing with. But it's triggered by the person passing away, but it's more highlighting something in you that for all kinds of different reasons, you either avoid it, didn't want to go there, for whatever the reason, and that means worth exploring. What was the main reason that you didn't want to connect with the person? People can say, yeah, I was just busy, but busy is a buzzword.
No, that's one scenario. And say, for example, as you also mentioned, that if, say, for example, on the other side, there's nothing that you can put a finger on saying that they were on the wrong side or they're doing something wrong, but they didn't do anything wrong. Say, for example, there's one thing by David Kessler, a very renowned grief counselor from America. He said something called living amends contract. So very interesting. It's like, since you couldn't say you have done something to someone, but you didn't get to say sorry to them. And before that, they passed away. Yeah. So you make this amends contract with that person. They're not around anymore. And you're saying from now on, whenever I do something wrong and I'm on the wrong side, I won't delay it. Yeah. I would apologize as early as possible. It's my living amends to you, to that person that I've lost, that from now on, to anyone I do anything wrong, I say sorry first and as early as possible. Yeah. This is how I'm working through it. It's really an interesting thing that at least you can't get that person back to say sorry to them, but you're constantly living through it. And in a way, you're improving, but it's a way of penance every time you get to do.
Well, you learn, you start to take a lesson out of it, realizing I must not delay this anymore. I need to keep short accounts, so to speak, and voice when I realize I was wrong or whatever.
And also it brings peace to you, isn't it? It's like, okay, I'm getting to say sorry because I was wrong. I should have said sorry earlier. I didn't do it. I'm doing it today. I've done it with this person, one. But you could have done it only once with that person. But now, instead of that, you are probably doing it 20 times. Every time it happens, you say, because this is my contract with you, the living amends contract. So every time it happens, every time I'll be the one who won't be making any delay in terms of saying sorry to someone and apologizing. Hi guys, I'm really sorry for interrupting this video. I promise I won't be long. As you might know, we have always maintained that we are not here to chase numbers. Our focus has always been on creating something meaningful and sharing it for free, what might end up helping others. But at the same time, to please the ever mysterious algorithm gods and to reach a wider audience, we need your support. So it would be my humble request to you all, wherever you watch our content, be it on Instagram or YouTube, please like and subscribe to our channels. That would help us immensely to keep on creating the content and sharing it with you all. Thank you. Now, let's get back to the video.
As you were sharing, you reminded me of a situation because I was once coaching a woman, which it was a very interesting one because, well, all people are interesting, so that's a bit of a generic phrase, so apology of that one. She had not a good relationship with her parents. And the way how that manifests, sometimes I used whatever object that we had at the scene, and we were in the public space. And so I took 2 glasses and a peppermill and then a napkin, right? And so the napkin I laid out over the table, and that represented the culture she was raised in, right? The 2 glasses represented mom and dad, and the peppermill represented her. And so I asked her, how do you position them on the napkin that's spread out? How would you position them? And of course, well, for me it was immediately obvious. She put the peppermill on the one end and the pans on the other end. And I think it was
the 2 glasses.
The 2 glasses, sorry. The 2 glasses on the other end, and one glass was slightly closer to the peppermill than the other. And as she was demonstrating that and connecting with it, something happened in this whole dynamic. And so I said to her, so now you're aware of the culture, how it has affected you, and the relationship dynamic that you have now seen. What would you like to do about it? And the first thing she did was she picked up the peppermill and took it completely off the table. And as she did that, something shifted in her eyes. So I said to her, what is happening? Because she became very emotional. I said,
So
well,
basically she took herself off the picture.
Yes. Because the awareness that she had, suddenly the insight is that she realized I have a choice to step out of this or not, because she always felt she was ingrained. Now, to give you some kind of background, she's a woman. They basically wanted a boy. Her father treated her as a boy. She has a brother who was basically the favorite. And the mother, interestingly enough, treated her also more like a boy. So there was this whole weird dynamic of, if I want to fit in as a woman, I need to man up in order to get the affirmation and etc. And of course that created a very unhealthy dynamic. And it affected her, and that's one of the reasons we have this coaching. But the realization I have a choice, I can step out of this culture, out of this dynamic, frees me up to be and choose to be my own person. But a lot of pain came up because of the loss and the anger of how she was being treated. Because part of the struggle was, well, how is it to be a woman when I expected to be a man? And that was a journey for her. But part of, and this is the reason why I'm highlighting this, there came so much grief loss to the service that she was struggling. Well, how do I process this? And sometimes I offer suggestions, and I let people decide whether that fits the context. I gave her some options. They said, well, you either can choose an object of your choice and express whatever you feel around it, and either, if it's, for example, if it's a stone, the stone represents something, and then you throw it into the ocean. Another way could be writing a letter, address it to, in this case, to her father.
Okay.
Which she did. She felt that was appropriate, so she wrote the letter. She went back to the country of birth.
But did she send it to him as well?
No, because he
Okay.
was already dead. He was already passed away.
Okay.
So she went to the grave, but she went to the grave, but she didn't have the something happened or it was not the right context, so she couldn't do it properly. So when she came back, she did it with me. She asked me if I was prepared that she would read the letter, and I was the witness. And I think it was for her a way of coming to consolidating what was happening, but also letting it go. And part of that was also forgiving him, letting go of all the anger and the judgment and the bitterness and everything associated with it, but also pinpointing, because that was really important, to voice how she felt during all those years. So to validate her. Is it making sense?
Yeah.
So for her, that was a powerful exercise. And you know, to cut the story short, we worked on some other ways of how to improve her own confidence. And you could see the shift. She was so happy in her own skin as a woman. This was lovely to see. You know, when there somehow people come completely out of their shell.
No, it's very important, as you said that, and this is one thing that anyone who's seeking help, like she did in the form of coaching, but at the same time, when she went to the grave of her father, she wanted you to be there after writing that letter.
Yeah.
The moment someone seeks help, I think it's very important to applaud them, because it's very important for those people, anyone who's going through the grief, to find that support around you.
Yeah.
And someone whose job is just to listen.
Yeah.
And they are providing you, even, say, for example, at that time, you had nothing to do when you went to the grave with her other than standing. She wasn't asking for your coaching. You weren't telling her what to do, but you were just there.
Yeah, was just witness.
Exactly. This is one of the things that most people forget to realize, and we judge people. Okay, someone died in their household. I mean, I have seen the losses in my own family. Apart from my mom and dad, my cousin and some other people, I'm not going to mention them directly because I don't have their permission.
Yep.
So, but I've seen the losses, and you cannot really judge how their family members or anyone related to them, including myself, how we are behaving, what we are doing. Initially, this is the tendency of people to judge like, oh, they look quite okay, and we don't see them mourning enough. And as you also said, okay, they're in a better place, and they're always with you. Things like that. We try to, probably out of a well-meaning place, we try to help people, but it really doesn't help. That's one.
Well, I think there's another thing going on. Because of the topic of death and loss, it can make people aware of their own expiration date. And so it can be a way of coping, you know, to make certain statements, because it makes us ourselves uncomfortable.
True. That probably happens more in a subconscious level.
Yeah. But it manifests through kind of statements. It's almost like you make a positive statement because you don't want to feel what's basically doing it in you.
Yeah.
And this goes into the arena of toxic positivity. I don't believe in you always need to be positive. You need to be real. Emotions, there's a wide spectrum of emotions. Personally, by the way, and this might be helpful for people to hear, how I approach emotions. I've made a change in how I view them. They are not positive or negative. They're not good or bad. Emotions are neutral. They are basically data that try to tell us something. So if I'm angry, the emotion anger is trying to tell me, like when you're in a cockpit, for example, in a plane, and you have these little signals they start bleeping. For example, you're losing your altitude, or you need to increase your speed. The light is signaling, pay attention. That is basically what emotions are trying to tell us. Pay attention. Oh, I feel anxious. Okay, what is it trying to tell me? The emotion itself, there's nothing wrong. And I think sometimes we judge emotions in they are either good or they are negative, and I realize for myself, I don't want to approach them as in a judgmental way. I need to validate them. Okay, I'm feeling anxious, or I'm feeling depressed, or I'm feeling sad. And then I need to zoom in and think, okay, what's happening? What was the trigger? Or, just explore that. Be curious about it instead of, oh, it's bad. You see what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
So, and I think that's important also with grief. And sometimes grief can manifest in joy, and that can even be misinterpreted, right?
Yeah, this is an interesting thing because say, for example, people stop celebrating things, people stop being happy, they feel like I'm guilty, I cannot be happy because my partner is gone, or someone in my life who brought a lot of meaning in, and they're not there anymore, and what's the meaning of me being alive? So I cannot be happy. But the thing is that it's very important to ask the question during that time, even though the people from outside, you have to think who was more meaningful, who has more significance in my life. Yeah, definitely. The people who are judging, you feel guilty, and you already have that guilt. That's why you feel that whenever people say something, it's just accentuated, that feeling.
Yeah.
But then it's important to think that, would that person not like me to be happy or smiling? And if I was celebrating something, or if I'm just happy or going through life a bit lighter, the person I've lost, would they object to it? I mean, if they didn't, then why shouldn't I celebrate that? Because that's what they would have wanted for me.
Yeah.
So, and I'm doing it. And this is what they would have wanted. And that person has more significance in my life. And another thing is that with couples, normally people think about, okay, all the good times I had, that's all. I won't have good times in my life coming ahead in future. That's all behind me now. But the thing is that people they keep on thinking like there was a time when they used to think of themselves as us, right?
Yeah.
But then, as you say, accepting the reality, which is very important, that you have to embrace it at some point, that it has turned from us to I now.
Yeah.
Or just me. And you have to learn to go through it. Yeah, please.
But you can honor, I think, and again, it depends on people's personal circumstances. But I think if you really had a good relationship, and I want to touch upon the guilt, by the way, as well, in a sec. If you really had a good relationship and somebody passed away, you honor them by celebrating the memories. There are in fact two deaths that people don't realize. There's a physical death when somebody passed away, right? But the second death is when we no longer remember them. So if you really had that kind of loving relationship that they meant so much for you, by keeping the memory alive, the anecdotes, the moments that you say, oh my gosh, it makes me smile, and you start sharing those stories. Oh, do you still remember when he did this or when she did that? I thought, oh my gosh, we always had, you fill in. That is a way of remembrance, and that's the other side of the coin. It's learning to embrace everything. Okay, the good, the bad, and the ugly. I think that's why grief is so much bigger than just get over it, stuff it. I need to close this door. It's over and done with. It doesn't work that way, because the problem with emotions is if we bury them alive. And unresolved grief, and this is the other side of the coin, if we do not process grief, we do not allow ourselves to process grief by going through it, it will bite us back longer term, and it can manifest physically, can even result into sickness. So we have to be careful, and that's why I love this kind of conversation, because I think we need to break open this whole awkwardness and difficulty or uncomfortableness about death and loss and normalize it. It's okay to mourn. It's okay to cry. It's okay to be angry. It's okay to be sad. It's great to be joyful, all at the same time. There's nothing wrong with you. It's part of life. You don't have to work hard in order to just get busy, because to me that is a coping mechanism that is unhealthy.
You're suppressing it, because
yes,
in anything, it not only grief, anything in life, if you avoid it, it will keep on pursuing you. The moment you face it, it transforms you, because it teaches you something. On the other side, you come out as a different human being.
Yes, but having said that, and this is, I want to stress this, there is no script for grief. Everyone grieves in a very different, in their own way. So the real question to ask yourself was, what would help you to recover through your grief? What is it, what you need right now? And that can be very different than compared to somebody else, but it doesn't have to be compared. It's finding out what will help you to process it. For me, when I went through loss, I went through huge trauma loss, more than a decade ago now. And wherever I walked, I cried, because all kinds of memories just popped up in my head. And it was, I think I cried for over 2 years. And I thought, when is this ever stopping? It was so exhausting. Because everywhere I walked, memories popped up. And when I had a chat with my mentor about it at a time frame, he said, when you experience loss, it's now because of a life that is no more, that is gone. You have to build new experiences around it. And I found it a very helpful way. And that's what I mean again. Grief will be for the rest of our life with us. It's like an inedible ink on our skin, so to speak. It will remain there. But the texture, the intensity, the structure will change. But by building a new life around it, of new experiences around it, we're not denying that it happened.
Yeah.
We embrace it as part of our story, but we build new experiences around it. And it's interesting because as I started to explore new things in my life, getting new experience that gave me joy, it started to soften, in one sense, the loss.
Yeah.
And so I think, and of course, it has time, and that's why I stress this to people. There's no time pressure on your grief. Don't believe, I have to be done now in a year. Take as long as it takes. Having said that, if you feel you're getting stuck in your grief, meaning you find it very hard to process, then I would strongly advise to seek help, how to process your grief better, because it can otherwise create more complications.
Not everyone is lucky to have the support system around them.
I agree, but then I didn't, so I thought.
No, I'm saying that's why you need the professional help at that point, or at least a support group or something where some other people would share. They would listen, and you're sharing, you're listening to them, and it helps. No one is giving anyone advice, but the thing is that the space to share. Because to be honest with you, I'd like to add to this. I had been, the last year, how things have been with the podcast and everything, I haven't done as many interviews and live streams and things, how things were before. Things have come to kind of a halt, slowed down rather. And every now and then I would bring it up. I'm like, oh my God, what's happening to me? I cannot bring myself back to that level of productivity, and that speed is gone and this, that. So, but the thing is that in my support, I'm lucky to have, say, my wife Esther. She would remind me rather that what are the losses that I've been through in my life and what I had to deal with. And overseas, not even in the UK, overseas, I stayed there for 3 months and going through all different kind of uncertainties. And right at the time, the country had the whole regime change.
Yeah.
So, but just because I had that, and it would give me some comfort. He said, okay, true.
Yeah.
But then how to look forward and try to change things. Let me tell you this. I knew all these things. I talk about these things. I am sharing this with other coaches like you and other people. And I'm going through the process of, being a coach myself. And then when I'm helping other people, knowing all this information, I couldn't help myself.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. Think about people who have tools to help or just work or just give it to other people. They can't help themselves. And then what about the people they don't know any better?
Yeah. Yeah.
And what about them?
It's a very good point. And to be honest, I recently had an experience which was really profound, and it was with another coach. Because I was dealing with something, and it was for the first time, interestingly enough, I really felt hurt. Because other times there was always this interaction or this fixing by sometimes good intentional, but it wasn't helpful, sometimes hurtful, and therefore I didn't felt safe to even go further. It just shut me down. And yet I needed space in order to express it. And whether I was right or wrong, it didn't even matter. I had to get out of my system. But every time I tried to do that, it was either overruled or dismissed or interjected, either spiritually explained, whatever you. And therefore, I didn't felt heard.
But without getting into the detail of it, what happened? What was the insight?
The insight was from I basically said to the coach, you provided hospitality to my pain. Because we all carry pain in one way or the other, which needs expression, whatever way that comes out, but it needs a safe space in order to be expressed. You will not be able to share stuff if you already feel judged. It will not work. You will not share it if there's already a bias against you, or if there's already, an assumption against you, or whatever it is. You will not share it. We either pick it up subconsciously, or you even by how people phrase things. So for me, I carried this for quite a long time, and it's not that I didn't want to share it, but I didn't sense the safety from the person concerned, which is an interesting one because we're talking about coaches. So if coaches are not providing the facility, what is that telling us, right?
Exactly, yeah.
Because
how did they provide that hospitable situation to you, the condition?
That's a good question. By just being quiet. And of course, sometimes a question, but not. It felt for me like I could breathe, and this is what most people need. You see, most of the time, people need to be able to express themselves because it's like a washing machine. As we express, our thoughts are being gathered together, and then we get our insight. But we need an environment that can hold that space without interjecting anything, just holding it. Because the person allowed me to come to my own insight. But I had to process it. I had to get out of my system. And by not interjecting it, by not holding basically holding a safe space was powerful. And of course, that's something I want to facilitate in my dealing with my clients, because I know how powerful that is. That in itself is transformational.
I feel that with coaches, it's a constant struggle in a sense that many of them have this feeling that I'm not providing value if I'm silent. It's a, say, half an hour session and there is a 5-minute silence. They're like, oh my God, but that silence, it helps the client to get that insight and to see them. You don't have to always fill in the gaps, And
exactly.
Silence. Yeah.
I think the problem, with some coaching, I think it's too much performance-based. Coaching is not about performance.
It's not about you. It's not about the coach.
I always say to people, listening, true empathic listening, attuned listening, deep listening, is putting the receiver in the spotlight, right? And your ego in the farthest corner in the backseat in the shadows. Because it's not about you. So, and that's why I always say this to leaders. Leaders, and particularly the more senior you are, you first listen and then you talk, not the other way around. And sadly, that doesn't happen even in the corporate. The CEOs think that they have to talk first, and then everyone listens. But going back to because I don't want to drift to the grief thing.
I would like to. bring it to grieving and losses. Say
Yeah,
people who are trying to help others,
yeah,
someone who's grieving, it's very important, as Marcus said, that just be there for them, give them the space. And if it's half an hour of silence, if that's all they need, just give
yeah,
them that. If coaches are struggling with that, people who are trained, I understand that many of us who are not trained in these things, they would find it hard. They feel like, no, I'll probably have to say something. I'll probably have to provide some kind of consolation and
yeah.
or solace. You don't have to do anything. Just be there
This
for them and also for yourself when you're
exactly.
grieving. Also for yourself. You don't have to like look at, oh my God, I need to do something. What's the solution? Just
Yeah.
be there for yourself as well. Yes,
It's
Marco.
the presence. I can give you another example, which I thought was very beautiful. A guy went sadly through a divorce that he didn't want, but it happened. There was betrayal involved, so all very traumatic. And so he basically was not confronted with a life changed. He sought help, but he also surrounded himself. I basically asked his friends to come around, and he said to them, would you be willing in turns to have a meal every day on 6 p.m., for example, for the next period of time? And they all committed it.
Wow.
And I thought, wow.
That's
To
heavy.
me, that is beautiful.
Yeah.
Because if I'm honest, I had it when I went through my ordeal. I had a few people who helped, but the majority of time I had to figure it out myself. It was very tough, very lonely, well. That's another story in itself. So when I heard that story, I thought, wow, that was so practical, but so powerful. Because the only thing that he wanted was, I need comfort. You don't need to explain everything. I don't need explanation. I just need the comfort of food, because he basically had not the stamina and the energy to cook for himself because of all the things that were happening. But just had a human being in front of him having the meal, and then that was it. And
I mean,
maybe
even
there
the
was.
people who provided the support, they deserve an award, I guess, because this is such a thing. How many times would you get that kind of support?
I think for me, I just have to look to my own life. That was rare, and I think, and that's made it life even tougher. I think a lot of people, the reality is, and that's the sad reality, a lot of people suffer alone. We could be more human to each other with just basically practical help. And coming back to how can you help somebody? By basically ask them, how can I help you best? What do you need most?
Exactly. And
Let them
people
express
who are
what they
thinking
need.
that whether I'll be able to do it and why should I do it, if you're questioning yourself. But to be honest with you, I would say that being in service to others, that gives you so much pleasure. Sometimes because the world we live in is very transactional now, you feel like, what am I getting in return?
Yeah, me,
But
me.
me all the time. But the thing is that the gratitude, sometimes even if someone don't express it, but you will feel that peace inside you. I'm telling you, because I practice it whenever I can. There
Yeah,
are things, if I feel like I can find someone who can wear this one, say some clothing, I look
yeah,
for people. I said,
yeah,
okay, what's your size of shoes? What's your size, or what do you wear? And even on the street, I sometimes look for homeless people, like, okay, I have this coat. I have a few extra. I'm not wearing it, but this is winter. It might be
yeah,
useful for that person.
yeah,
But
yeah.
the thing is that by giving, you don't have to make a show out of that. Like someone has seen it, you have shared with someone, no one knows.
No
But
one needs to know.
it's totally internal, because your peace, the inner peace, is totally an internal thing that you need to experience yourself. And as Marco was saying, literally, I felt Marco got emotional. To be honest, I got emotional to listening to the story as well, that every time that someone would be sitting down, and just put yourself in that person's shoes, that someone has lost someone, and they had some kind of ritual that probably at 6 o'clock every day they had that meal with their
Yeah,
partner, and that person is gone, just to even to avoid the situation,
yeah.
and also have someone in front of you. It's so powerful. It was really heavy.
Yes, but again, please hear this also. It's not a script to follow. It's determined by the person concerned. So let the person communicate, decide what they need. If they say, well, I just want you to be quiet and that's it, or no, I don't need anything, that's fine too. I think, and sometimes, on the other hand, we also have to be realistic. If you see that somebody is struggling to clean, then offer just, I will clean. So if you see that somebody has not done the cleaning in the house, then just don't ask them and say, hey, would you mind if I help you just doing the cleaning?
I'm smiling because it reminded me of the grief counselor David Kessler I was talking about. He lost his son at the time when he was grieving. There was one night he was hungry or he needed to eat something because he forgot about his routine. Everything just went off kilter and he wasn't really keeping that schedule and he didn't go for shopping, no food, nothing. But then he opened the fridge and he found there was a frozen, I forgot, it's some kind of processed supermarket food, lasagna.
Yeah.
But that's not the kind of brand that he would normally buy. But he just saw that and he said that his heart melted and he was thinking that someone had thought about it. Whatever capacity they had, this is what they could afford. But they thought of me that one night or one day, whenever the time of the day is, I would need that food and they kept it there for me.
Yeah.
Exactly the same.
And it's interesting because we're talking about food. It reminds me about the art of hospitality, which I think is still a lost art in our society, because hospitality in its true nature is not about getting anything back in return. It's basically providing food, shelter for somebody for their enjoyment, but also for, in this case, comfort. And there is something about food, because when I look back to my ordeal years ago, I didn't have the energy. I lost 20 kilos in 6 months in body weight. I had at times even not money for food. And sometimes I look back, how would my life have been if more people were basically more practical oriented? Hey, Marco, do you need a meal? I know they could not solve my problem.
Yeah.
But they could solve this, which would basically give my body more energy. I've recovered, but I think it had huge impact on my physicality at the time because of the inconsistency. And made me now much more empathic, compassionate because of that consequence, which I am now more sensitive to. That's why I think hospitality, is so powerful. There is a book, if people are interested, by Gil Gavera, Unreasonable Hospitality, The Art of Excellence. And he's a restaurateur in New York City. But a lot of the principles that he described, I think, are transferable. It's very powerful. And I think hospitality is also through listening. I don't have to say anything. I just provide the holding space.
Be there for someone.
Yes. And it's so powerful. I cannot stress this enough. It reminds me of another situation of a woman who I was in a workshop once, and we ended up having a chat afterwards. And she started to express her ordeals and her challenges in her life, and she became increasingly angry and upset and distressing, and she started it all blurring it out, and she became very, not aggressive, but really a lot of anger. And then suddenly she stopped herself and she said, "Why are you not doing anything?" I said, "Well, it's not about me. It sounds like you really needed to express this, so I'm just providing you the space to do so." And then she started crying. And so what's happening? I said, "Well, this is the first time that somebody just let me let it all out, because I always was shut down." And it just made me realize afterwards, if we would just learn to be comfortable with somebody else's uncomfortable emotions. I'm okay with those emotions, and the reason why I'm okay with it, because I have walked my own journey.
Yeah.
I'm not afraid of anger. I'm not afraid of sadness and grief and the whole spectrum of it, even though it may feel uncomfortable. But I learn how to manage it, not control it, but how to manage it. And if it's not about me, I just hold the space. And that in itself is hospitality, because you provide space for somebody to be able to come to their own space, to their own sense. And sometimes people need, to be honest, we all need that. Sometimes we need to be able to just offload, not be corrected and not being edited, or you can't really say that. Sometimes we have to be able to express it without any repercussions, because sometimes the energy in that has to be expressed.
Very true. I've learned it the hard way. I'm guilty of doing it. I still have clear, vivid memory, which I'm not going to share here. But the thing is that how someone was just sharing a bad experience with me, and when I just straight away thought that I have to give some advice and also point out what they could have done better rather than listening to them. Imagine. It's like textbook mistakes, like literally what can go wrong. I have done everything. So every time I look back at it, as I feel like I've known better by now, and I'm still a work in progress. But the thing is,
like we all are.
Yeah, and I just, every time I go back to that moment, I remember the moment, the place, the person, and I think, oh my God, I don't want anything out of that, but at least if I could give that comfort to that person when they were sharing that bad experience they had, rather than trying to provide them some solution, and also in the process just saying, oh, what you just said, probably you shouldn't have said that, Imagine.
I can imagine, but on the other hand, we all make mistakes, and those are basically our learning lessons of doing it. Sometimes we need to feel it, how not to do it.
Yeah.
And I have loads of them.
To realize that and owning it is the first step probably, and that opens the door for you to correct those mistakes.
I think it's important for those who need to hear this. When you really struggle with guilt, particularly when somebody is gone, because means guilt, you felt that you should be doing something and you didn't, and you feel guilty about it, then voice that. Either find a way of creative expression, that can be through a letter, but make it very specific what the guilt is about, and then ask for forgiveness to the person concerned, but also forgive yourself for not doing it, for whatever that might be. Because guilt, guilt will, otherwise you carry guilt everywhere, which will basically start to affect you. It's more facing it head on, make it then very specific, speak it as if the person is still in front of you, and basically acknowledge, I realize I should be there, I didn't, and the reason why, you maybe even be real about it, why you didn't do it, voice it, but then basically ask, I'm really sorry, I really caused possibly hurt, will you forgive me? I ask for forgiveness, and I also choose to forgive myself and release myself of any judgment upon myself or any punishment in order to counteract it, because that's not healthy change. If we start to do things because we want to punish ourselves, that's not transformation. That's basically, a torment.
You'll be lucky if that person is still alive or still around, that you can still say sorry to them. If they're not, then this is what you have to do. You have to find a way of releasing yourself of that guilt.
Yes, and if you need help, I would, and I'm available, you're available, so do feel free to reach out, or other people around you, it doesn't have to be us, but do find safe people. I just want to stress this point. Find people who are safe, who are good listeners, who are not judgmental, who are not going to give you advice or fixing you or interrupt or, kind of other stuff throw at you. It needs to be people where you feel I can share this with without any repercussions, where you feel safe, psychologically safe and emotionally secure. That I think is very important. And sometimes that family is not the right people, sadly to say, and if that's the case, then find an outsider, either a coach, a therapist, counselor, or a good friend, who basically can be that kind of soundboard, in order to help you process it. And also to stress this, because I don't want to give the impression, when people do seek help, oh my gosh, am I going to go through a long period of time? Sometimes it's just a few conversations. It's not about, it's all what will serve you. And if that's only one conversation with the woman that I mentioned earlier, we just had, I think, over total four kind of conversations, and that was it. And then life moves on. So find help in whatever way will work for you, but do engage with it. Do not suppress emotions. Grief is normal. It's good for the soul. It's good to cry. It's good to tears. Tears are the soul's way of release. It's a healthy sign. So if you cry a lot, it's a good sign.
Thank you, Marco, and thanks for your time. It's as I was expecting that it's a great discussion, and definitely I hope people would find some nuggets of information and helpful information, and it will at least make them think what they can do. Even if you pick one thing from here, I think that would be helpful. We tried to touch upon a lot of different aspects of loss and grieving and grief, and what people go through and how to process in a lot of different stages as well, even though it could be different for every human being because we have different personalities. So on that note, we hope to see you again next week. That's the pledge that we had made with each other and with ourselves. That's the service we'd be providing, because end of the day, as we were saying, there's an expiration date, an expiry date we have. It's written. We'll be gone.
Yeah.
What legacy we are leaving behind, just as humans, towards other humans. So on that note, for grieving, when it comes and someone going through losses, one human to another, the least we can do, even though that's the best thing, that we just be there for them and just see what they need. But in the meantime, I would say, please follow the social media for both of us. Marco has his platform on Instagram, and also in the show description, you'll find where you can find Marco and get in touch with him if you need his help. And also for Knowing Who You Are, you know where to go, but also you'll find it in show description. So on that happy note, everyone, see you next week and have a good one. Thank you.
Have a good one.